English learning is becoming more and more important in today's rapidly growing and globalizing Chinese society. With so many eager to learn, places like English Corner in People's Park has drawn a regular weekend crowd of English enthusiasts.
I think English is the most important.
English can be the tool to communicate with others.
Even children are learning from the earliest of ages.
My parents want I learn English.
自己喜欢
Because it's good for me.
And more people are studying abroad. How hard is it to learn English? Culture Matters will discuss.
Culture matters, it matters. Hello, Shanghai. Welcome to our show. Face the upcoming Olympics and the 2010 Expo. English learning has become a very essential and trendy thing in the city. On the other hand, Chinese learning is a very important task for the growing expat society in this dynamic city. Joining us today in the studio is one of the most famous English teacher in the Greater China area, Mr. Peter Lai. Welcome to the show.
Yes, I feel very happy to be here.
He is one of the most famous English teachers in China and has over 25 years of teaching experience. He is the founder of the prestigious publishing house, and his popular radio show has been on air for 15 years. Peter Lai believes, whether they are adults or children, that everyone has the ability to master the language. He now focuses his time on teaching children.
What is your name?
My name is Kathy.
Beautiful. In the future, when you grow up, you will be somebody. 就是将来会了不起. I'm sure.
And Rachel from the United States, a 交通大学 student.
Yes, thank you.
American-born Rachel is a student at Jiaotong University, majoring in Chinese language and culture. This is her 5th year living in China. Music has always been an important part of Rachel's life.
Hello. Hi, Rachel.
She now teaches musical instruments as a part-time job in Shanghai.
And of course, Eriko from Japan, a Fudan graduate. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Eriko Sasaki was born in Tokyo. But while she mainly grew up in Japan, she lived and studied for a while in New York. She first came to Shanghai as a university student, majoring in Chinese at Fudan University. As a straddler of Eastern and Western cultures, she has gained an interesting perspective on both their similarities and differences.
Mr. Lai, as I introduced, he's a very famous, or one of the most famous English teacher. But to what I understand is, back in 40 years ago, you only got scored of 7.
Yeah, 7 points only on the joint college entrance examination.
7 points only?
Yeah, I'm telling the truth, in fact.
What's the full marks then?
Well, the full marks, of course, were 100 points.
After that, and this gentleman earned full marks.
Yes, this has to do with the TOEFL test.
TOEFL test, yes.
So
Yeah.
I got full marks also.
What a dramatic change.
So that's why I say my story is a little bit bizarre, in fact.
Tell us a little bit more about it. What motivated you to start learning English?
Yes, all right. You know, my father, upon hearing that I failed to pass the test, he was very disappointed. So he kicked me out of the family.
Really?
I learned to live on my own and study on my own. I started from scratch.
What do you mean by kick out of the family?
Because, I was looked down upon by all the people in my neighborhood. They thought that I was good for nothing. And of course, this brought
bad
shame
kid.
upon
Bad kid.
my family. Yes.
And how old were you at this time?
That time I was 18 years old.
Okay, so
Yes.
just finishing high school.
Yes, and I ended up, being unable to go to college. So I learned to study anything on my own.
Wow.
That's
quite
pretty
interesting.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without tutor, without any
No.
any teaching assistants?
No.
No?
If you want to learn English again, you should treat yourself or imagine yourself as a newborn baby. So that's why I learned to, improve my pronunciation. For a long time, my pronunciation was like this. Disu iso poco. Where are you going? Like this.
Okay.
So I started by improving my pronunciation. And this was quite easy. All you have to do is to buy, some kind of a, source, or so to speak, we say tape or something. And then by listening to tape again and again, 2 vowels a day at a time, you kept on practicing reading the phonetic symbols out loud, and gradually you learn to shape your mouth, or you learn to put your tongue in the right position. This is very, very important.
I
Yes.
find it interesting you say learn like a newborn baby, because they say the best time to learn a language is at 2 years old, because then you just accept everything as being new, just as you hear your parents speak, so you imitate what they say. And yeah, I think that's really the best way to learn how to speak a new language.
True. And this applied to Eriko too. I think Eriko moves to New York.
New York, right. When I was
And
2 years old.
Oh.
So there I got my pronunciation as well.
That was the golden age, I would say. Yes, very good.
Yeah, that's a,
But she was lucky, Her
Right.
case is totally different, of course.
I was lucky.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. So context is really important to some people. But to you, you were born and raised in a totally Chinese environment.
And also a very poor family.
Poor family.
Yeah, very poor family.
Does that have anything to do in language learning?
Oh, definitely, because your parents couldn't afford to pay for your education if you failed to pass the examination. Usually, for those rich families, they would send their children to special training centers and things like that. They call this cram school. Okay, so they could start from the very beginning, start all over again. But in my case, I couldn't get chances like this.
Okay, so how, besides the cassette tape you're listening to,
right?
And what kind of a book you were reading?
Beautiful. Sammy asked me a very good question. Right after I practiced my pronunciation, I decided to learn to speak English on my own, because I knew that time, since I already imagined myself as a newborn baby. You should know that newborn babies learn to speak by saying some simple words first.
牙牙学语.
Exactly. So I decided to learn to speak English. Then the first book ever that I bought was just a very short, let's say, a book that contained very short dialogues. I still remember even today the first lesson that goes like this. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. How about you then? I'm fine. And that's it. Since I already knew how to read, those phonetic symbols, first of all, I would bother to, look up a word in the dictionary, words that I didn't understand. Once I just make sure that I could pronounce, this particular word precisely or accurately, I'll decide. Then the second time, I'll just read the whole context very, very, very slowly, making sure that the pronunciation was correct. Later on, whenever I had time, my spare time, for example, if I had about 5 minutes, for a rest or something, then I would just, open the book, read the sentences again and again, very slowly, so slowly that I had ample time to organize my thoughts. And then I didn't bother to recite the lesson, but rather I just kept on reading the text again and again until I was familiar with the contents. Then that was usually in the afternoon, I guess. Then I would just put the book away, and then I learned to act the lesson out by role playing.
Anyhow, so we come back to listen to Mr. Lai's story for a little bit more, especially the role that you are playing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We come back after the break.
I'm a very shy person.
Are you?
It's very hard to talk to Japanese because everybody will say,
Turn around, talking to the person in the air. I'm fine. How about you then?
Welcome back to Culture Matters. Tell us more about your role-playing game.
Beautiful.
Please.
Before we touch on that topic, can we just talk a little bit about the necessity of exposing yourself to different kinds of English, not language. I mean, different kinds of English. This is a must because quite often you may have some chances to, to meet people from different areas or from different countries.
True.
If you just learn to speak American English, this is not enough. Let's go back to this topic.
Sure.
What's your question again, please?
I'm sorry. No problem. You mentioned that you play a kind of a game, like a role-playing.
Oh, yes.
So in practice, in your English practicing.
Yeah.
Tell us more about
Well,
it.
this is very important also because basically I'm a very shy person. You know,
Are you?
I mean,
Really?
back, let's say 50 or 40, 40 years ago, that time, I was quite shy. Even today, I'm still very shy. I just pretend to be, let's say, easygoing and things like that. You see, most of the time, I just sit over there without saying any word. So I'm a shy person.
So quiet.
But when I began to talk, I totally changed.
Okay.
So that time, role-playing was very important to me. I, of course, I could just walk down the street and run into some native speakers, and I could say something in English. But that time, since I knew that I was very shy, I decided to, learn to talk to myself by role-playing.
Okay.
Memorizing the dialogue doesn't mean that you're able to speak beautiful English in the future, because if you just memorize things at the same time, you're framed by the content. You will never bother to use words in different situations. So by role-playing, it doesn't mean that you should go line by line or sentence by sentence. You can change the contents. You can choose the words you wanted to use. And gradually, again and again, all the contents, all the words in the, I call dead book, will become alive. Yes.
Is that a common techniques for any language learning?
I would say this is the norm, and this is also the right philosophy.
Show us a little bit about your role-playing game.
I would just, do the role-playing like this. Hello, John. Glad to see you again. How are you? Then I would just turn around, talking to the person in the air. I'm fine. How about you then? Not bad, but I have some time this afternoon. Would you like to go fishing? I have a test to prepare for. See, the original content was not very long. And yet, when I did the role-playing, I augmented the content using the words that I, just popped into my mind. Quite often, you tend to, make mistakes. That's okay. Doesn't matter. As long as you just, spoke out.
Oh, it's interesting. It reminds me of, because in Japan, we have a lot of education, which we start from junior high for 6 years for English. But then I hear a lot of people telling me that when people go traveling to Japan, it's very hard to talk to Japanese because everybody will say, oh, I can't speak Japanese, and they'll just go away. But I just thought it would be perfect for Japanese to have those, maybe not role-playing, but conversation classes. Because we read the books, but we never use it, so we lose.
You're right.
How about you, Rachel? If you're learning Chinese, have you ever played some kind of a game like that? The same game?
Not necessarily by myself. I learned my basic level of Chinese when I was still in America. So yes, when we were learning there, the very basic, it was all Americans obviously, and we didn't have the environment to, go out and practice what we were learning, to apply what we were seeing in the book. And so yes, some of our teachers, some of the better teachers would have us role play in class.
Sure. So when you first arrived in the United States, I mean, do you feel any difference in the language between the
obviously, there was culture shock.
Sure. Okay, but we talk about that after the break. Thank you. Okay, we'll be back.
You saw tall people with only one brow instead of two brows. Okay. Very straight.
Is that considered a bribery?
Sort of, I would say.
Mid-70s, you got hippies turning into disco queens.
Welcome back to Culture Matters. Peter, tell us, when you first arrived the United States, did you feel any difference?
Oh, yes, big difference. Because, for example, this particular question, where are you going? In the States, if you, got acquainted with some Americans over there, or you, befriended them, they will say, hey, where to, buddy? Instead of saying, where are you going, mister? So, language-wise, I already sensed some kind of cultural shock to some extent. And also those people that I saw on the screen, in the movies, they were, either very beautiful ladies or very handsome boys or whatever. But once you got to the United States, you were shocked to know, wow, they were not like us, Actually, they were the same. You saw tall people with only one brow instead of two brows. Very straight. Then you will never, feel self-conscious.
Okay. So is that the same feeling when you first arrived in the U.S. or here in China? I mean, to both of you?
For me, because I was in the state when I was young.
Yeah.
Actually, I was shocked when I went back to Japan because everybody was black.
What do you mean by everybody's black? Oh, the hair.
The hair is black, yellow skin. But when I was in the state, where it was yellow hair, maybe a little brownish, black. So I was opposite, like shocked. Oh, everybody is the same.
So he mentioned something like the image from a movie, the difference between the image from a movie and the real world.
Yes.
Do you feel the same?
Well, for America, yes, I think that obviously America is not what they show in the movies. I mean, you can't take Hollywood to be true. It's not true. And so, of course, yes, when all that they've seen of America is Hollywood, and then they arrive in America, it's going to be a shock.
Well, when you first come to China, were you shocked by the people like us? We don't look like Jackie Chan or Bruce Lee.
Well, actually, I think my surprise when coming to China was more that people don't all look the same. Because it's kind of a bad thing to admit, but when you're in America and you think of China or you think of Japan or Korea or any of the Asian countries, you kind of picture everyone, to look like Jackie Chan or to look like, everyone with the same type of face, the same type of hair. But I got here and I found, I have Chinese friends who have naturally curly hair. Or, you have people who are very tall. I mean, you find Yao Ming.
But have you ever encountered any difficulties because of language difference or the cultural difference in America?
Basically, I just ran into very little trouble over there because before I got to the United States, I already learned to speak English, very smoothly. It was some cultural things that really, bother me sometimes. But this could be solved very easily simply by making friends with them.
So making friends and, of course, try to learn the culture better.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So language learning
doesn't
necessarily mean that you have learned the culture for language, right?
Well, I would say so because, if you just learn to speak English only, if you don't bother to understand what, other things are involved in your language learning process, you will never go very far.
So when you first arrived in the United States, you would not talk to the people on the street and say, hey, where are you going? To the people, to those strangers. I mean, making friends and the first step.
Yeah.
What's your first step?
I would talk to first of all, I have to find my student advisor, and then he will give me some tips on how to, study, how to go to class, in that particular school at the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis. So I learned immediately to make friends with my classmates. And then by talking to them, sometimes, of course, before I went to the United States, I was told by a friend of mine to prepare some souvenirs like the small lanterns, okay? And I gave them, to those American friends, and we became better friends. And they would, take me to their houses, and then I learned those American cultures naturally.
Yes. Even your teachers too?
Yes.
Is that considered a bribery or something?
Sort of, I would say, because we ended up having a very good relationship.
I see. That helps.
That really helped to some extent, or a large extent.
Have you arranged everything before you go there, or just with a very good English?
Right. Because that time I knew that my English was getting a lot better, and I scored very high on the TOEFL test, and I was qualified. I was admitted to the University of Minnesota, and that's all. I never bothered to look for more information in terms of room and board and things like that, really. So I was not prepared, to be very frank. So when I got over there, and I thought to myself, I got a lot more things, that I should have done before. So I was actually left in a very dangerous situation because the season was winter. Okay, yes.
Okay.
Bad and cold there. Right.
You're catching the spring semester.
Yes.
I see. Okay. So cold weather.
Cold weather.
You don't have enough clothes.
Worse still, I didn't apply for a registration, with the dormitory. Okay, so unfortunately, I was left at the somewhere, okay, for some time. But because of my English, I took the initiative, to approach people, and then they took me to a nearby rooming house where finally I settled down.
So thanks for internet, because nowadays people can do a lot of research through internet, so get to know the place that we're going and so forth.
Yes.
But that was in late 70s, right?
Yes, mid 70s.
Mid 70s.
Yes.
So since you didn't have the internet that time and not a lot of information, like how many things did you bring when you first got there? Like
no idea at all, but I didn't carry the blue jeans because a majority of students over there in the United States wear blue jeans only. Okay, right. And I bought some beautiful pants, a business suit. I really made a clown of myself. Yeah.
Yes, in America, in Minnesota in the 70s, that would be a little bit different. Wearing a suit to class wouldn't quite be the norm.
Yes.
Looks like a stranger, though.
Yes.
That's I think this hippie culture still very.
Yes, going on over there.
Going into disco time.
Going into disco.
Mid 70s, you got hippies turning into disco queens.
Yeah, the transition point.
Yeah.
I see. Oh, we talk about that's a very interesting subject. Transform from hippies or like a go-go to disco.
In today's rapidly growing and globalizing Chinese society, people from all ages and educations want to learn English, even children starting from the earliest of ages.
My parents want I learn English.
自己喜欢
Because it's good for me.
Each year, more and more students choose to study abroad. Let's ask the English enthusiasts of English Corner in People's Park what the advantages are to an overseas education.
Maybe the most important is environment.
Study mode, of course, they have the advantage.
They are open mind, and when they come back to China, come back to their motherland, they can find a good job.
Culture matters, it matters. Hello, Shanghai. Join us today again is Mr. Peter Lai, one of the most famous English teacher here in the Greater China area, and of course Rachel and Erico.
He is one of the most famous English teachers in China and has over 25 years of teaching experience. He is the founder of the prestigious publishing house, and his popular radio show has been on air for 15 years. Peter Lai believes, whether they are adults or children, that everyone has the ability to master the language. He now focuses his time on teaching children.
Oh, I see.
What is your name? My name is Kathy.
Beautiful. In the future, when you grow up, you will be somebody. 就是将来会了不起 I'm sure.
American-born Rachel is a student at Jiaotong University, majoring in Chinese language and culture. This is her 5th year living in China. Music has always been an important part of Rachel's life.
Hello. Hi, Rachel.
She now teaches musical instruments as a part-time job in Shanghai. Eriko Sasaki was born in Tokyo, but while she mainly grew up in Japan, she lived and studied for a while in New York. She first came to Shanghai as a university student, majoring in Chinese at Fudan University. As a straddler of Eastern and Western cultures, she has gained an interesting perspective on both their similarities and differences.
Welcome. Thanks
Thank
for joining
you.
us
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you. We've been talking about your preparation or your practicing English. You first arrived in the United States. What's the first impression to you?
As I said before, everything was new to me, even though I had been studying English for some time. The language or the English that I learned here in China was, a far cry from, the real English in the United States. Of course, basically, the sentence structures are about the same, except, for the wording. So sometimes they tend to say, we have this kind of a term called lazy English. What's up, dude? Instead of saying, how are you?
Okay. How's it going, man?
Yeah, how's it going, man? And things like that. Howdy. They, say hello to me by saying howdy. I thought, they were speaking Sichuan dialect. 你娶不娶? Howdy, 我要娶. Things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'd say that every part of America has a different way of saying things, pretty much. I mean, my family is from Tennessee in Georgia.
Tennessee.
And while I've moved around the States a lot, so I've kind of lost a lot of my accent. But as soon as I go back to Tennessee or to Georgia, I don't say, hello, how are you? I say, hey, honey, how you doing? And, you switch back into that colloquial sort of speaking. So, yeah, in Minnesota, it's going to be one way. In Tennessee, it's going to be another. In New York, it's going to be totally different.
Did they ever surprised by your English?
Sort of, yes. They thought that I was, born in the States, but I just, told them again and again, actually, I learned to speak English somewhere. They will find immediately because the words that I chose to use, were slightly different from the words that they would use. That's why I call this culture shock,
Different.
Yeah. For example, if we learn, Chinese tend to pay very close attention to grammar. So we'll say, hey, come and lie down here. They will say, come and lay down here. You can lay back and watch television. I would say, you can lie back and watch television. In this case, lay is wrong, according to the grammar rules.
Are you saying that the language that we are learning here in this part of the world is more like a written language?
Yes, basically. Unfortunately, Chinese society is famous for its examination-oriented system over here. Students are taught to score high on tests only. But, we should teach students more, let's say, in the field of practical English, so to speak, I would say. So bookish English, of course, is important because this will help you score high on the test. But it's rather language, or the English language for survival that really counts.
Yeah, I think that it's very similar, more similar than people might think to Chinese, where in Chinese you have the spoken language and you have the written language. And I mean, Chinese is the same. You're not going to use proper grammar and a full sentence structure when you're speaking, you know, in the markets or something like this. And it's the same in America. It's not really something to be proud of. But yes, in America, what matters is getting your point across and, you know, and sounding natural about it. And so even if you're sometimes using words that aren't exactly right, as long as it's the same as what other people are using and they understand it in that way, then it's right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw a big nothing there because Erico, so you agree with them, with Rachel in this perspective?
Right, I do, yes.
So what about the difference between Japanese, Chinese, and English?
Japanese, Chinese, and English. One thing, well, if I say the same thing, I think it's the same that written and spoken language is different. Even Japanese, even people say it's very polite, and written usually is politer than the speaking. But we have difference as well. So I think that's a common thing with any language.
Yeah.
The language that we're using in this land.
Right.
And of course, it's a little bit different than the language that you have learned before you come over here.
Oh, actually, for me, it was different because I learned Chinese here, so that was very easy for me because then I don't have any accents and I came here, so I just pick up the word from Chinese. So that was very, very easy. Yes.
So in learning the culture instead of language, it took you 3 months to correct your pronunciation and so forth. And how long would it take? Will you take to learn the culture there?
Well, it would take forever, I would say.
Forever.
Yeah, forever, because there are always things that we don't understand quite often. Right.
Give us an example, please.
It's very hard to tell because by watching television or some movies, you will find, hey, there are also things that you have never heard about. So this is something that can make your life quite interesting. Live and learn, as they say.
Yes. My mother also lives in China, and in her company they have many interns coming over from America, and we love it because these interns, maybe they're Chinese majors in an American university, but whatever, they're very confident about their Chinese, and they arrive here in China so confident, saying, "Oh yes, I'm fluent in Chinese," and they go outside, and they come running back and are like, what language are they speaking? And you're like, well, they're speaking Mandarin, maybe a little bit of a Shanghainese accent, but they're like, I don't understand anything. And no one understands them. And yeah, I mean, you have to be in the environment, in the culture, to be able to really speak the language, because you have to have culture to speak the language.
As an English teacher, later on I became an English teacher. I pay very close attention to the words native speakers are using. For example, in Chinese we say 韭菜. In English, according to the dictionary, we would say leeks.
Leeks.
L-E-A-K.
Leeks.
Yeah, leek. L-E-E-K-S. But actually, it's chives.
Yeah.
It's this particular word that's actually correct. So this is something that you can always find interesting to learn.
So are you saying that we shouldn't rely on dictionary only? I mean, no, you don't have to answer me, so we talk about that after the commercials. We'll be right back. Kawaii. Oh, sugoi.
They didn't trust my score, so they would say, hey, you got to take another test again.
Well, what do you mean they don't trust it?
They want to know what you can do in person.
So as they say, seeing is believing.
Welcome back to the show. Same question.
Yes.
Are you saying that dictionary is not a reliable toolbook?
When it comes to dictionaries, you have to be very careful. You should choose dictionaries written by native speakers instead of dictionaries, unfortunately, written by local Chinese, because our ideas our ways of thinking are slightly or more or less, different from those of, native speakers of English. So sometimes, for example, this word lovely, if you use what they call the Chinese English dictionary or English Chinese dictionary, you would say lovely simply means 可爱的. Whereas in those English dictionaries, the definition is lovely simply means good looking, beautiful. So if you want to say in Chinese 可爱的, rather the right word is adorable or lovable or cute.
Cute.
Yes.
Just like in Japanese, we always say kawaii.
Kawaii.
Or sugoi. I mean,
Right.
we use that a lot too, right? Kawaii doesn't mean a person or a doll or something. Sometimes you can use that to express your feelings.
Right.
And I think
exactly.
that's the same. So language changing, huh?
Yeah.
It's a little bit changing. Okay. When you first got there, with your perfect pronunciation in English, were you treated as a foreign student as the others, or were you treated differently?
Well, they immediately knew because, they knew about my background. They knew that, I was a foreign student. So they treated me as a foreign student. But sometimes we felt very close to one another. So we became very good friends. As we talked about, things that had to do with daily lives and things like that, they would never treat me as a foreigner. They would just regard me as a friend or someone that was, born over there. So there was no what they call the gap in between. So I felt very happy about that because I volunteered to mingle with them instead of, unlike those majority of people, from China, they would just stay away from them, probably because of the language barrier. They learned to gather together among their groups. They never would just, go out and talk to people and even, go to the American friends' houses, so to speak.
Some of the critics says that American people is a kind of a stereotype towards the Chinese students or toward immigrants. So have you ever feel the same?
No, but I still remember the first day I went to the University of Minnesota because of my high score. They didn't trust my score, so they would say, "Hey, you got to take another test again. I want to make sure that your English is as good as shown on the test."
Well, what do you mean they don't trust it?
Because they know that Chinese students are very good at taking tests. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that test, even today, I still can remember. It's called Miller's test. It's not unlike the TOEFL test, but slightly simpler.
Yes, they know that test taking is very important in Asian culture. People have learned the methods for taking tests. And in America, it's not so much that, it's not about getting a high score on the test. That's just a small part of the larger picture. You have the test scores, you have your CV, if you're getting a job, you have the interview. And from my experience, I think that the interview in America is more important than those test scores. Because in America, they don't want to know what you can do on paper. They want to know what you can do in person.
So as they say, seeing is believing.
Right.
Seeing is believing. So as a Japanese, when you go back to the United States for college, were you taking a TOEFL test?
Well, I haven't, and I was actually surprised when I went to the state that everybody was trying to involve in some kind of activities or volunteering. Because back in Japan, my friends usually, like Chinese, we try to take a lot of tests as much as we can and put in the CV, and like we say that we have this kind of qualification, and that helps us a lot. But back in the state, I think it was more about what we can do, what we were involved.
And talk about education systems.
Yeah.
Educational system. Are they the same there as where you're from?
Of course not the same, because as I said before, the Chinese society is basically an exam-oriented society. We, take tests, one test after another on a daily basis, whereas in the United States, tests, of course, are important, but it's your, practical performance, in school, either in school or at work, that really counts.
Yes.
So do they have a lot of homeworks and so forth, just like what we did
not necessarily homework, but rather a lot of reading to do. Or, you can do this right in school or after school. Take me, for example. I spent about 8 hours, I think almost every day in the, we call this, general library, the biggest library in the United States. I mean, in Minnesota, over there. It's open 24 hours a day. You can tell.
You mean the public library?
Yeah, this. Yes, the school library.
School library.
University libraries. Yeah.
So I spend most of the time doing a lot of research. Usually, the tests that they gave over there in the United States were not basically the questions with fixed answers, but rather open questions.
Oh yeah, essay questions.
Yes, so that's why you've got to do a lot of research.
During the college days, are you taking any side jobs like 打工?
Luckily, I was on a scholarship.
Okay.
Everything was paid for in the States.
Yeah. Excuse me. So we talk about that after the break.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we'll be back.
The Chinese calligraphy.
On a voluntary basis.
Yeah. No, of course not. You should pay for that.
But you say you're a volunteer.
渤海同欢.
Okay.
Pam, pam, boom, boom, pam, boom, boom, pam, boom, pam. We formed this kind of a band.
Culture matters, it matters. Welcome back. Mr. Lai, Peter.
Yes.
Did you get a side job or a part-time job during your college days?
I was on a scholarship, so I shouldn't have worried about this. Anyhow, I still, bothered to find some odd jobs to do, simply because, I had to send the scholarship back to my parents.
Oh.
Yeah, they needed money, of course,
Okay.
So I sometimes, found some odd jobs to do, but I was different because I knew that I was able to speak English. So about 2 or 3 months before, summer, vacation came, I would send letters to all the senior high schools or junior high schools nearby. I volunteered to teach students over there during the summer vacation the Chinese calligraphy.
On a voluntary basis?
Yeah. No, of course not. You should pay for that.
But you say you're a volunteer. I thought you were on a voluntary basis. No, that's a different story.
Out of politeness, they, of course, would pay me some money. Okay. So I felt very happy about that. So I learned to do things that had to do with my English proficiency. That, of course, saved me the trouble of having to go to the restaurants where you work either as a busboy or someone that was doing the dishes.
Yeah.
And another thing was that I used to be a drummer, so I formed a Chinese band specializing
drummer.
Yeah, traditional Chinese music.
Oh, okay.
With me playing not the Western drums. I used to play the Western drums, but when it came to the Chinese drums, it was basically the same. For example, in Chinese we have, a very popular song called 渤海同欢. Okay. Pam, pam, boom, boom, pam, boom, boom, pam, boom, pam, We formed this kind of a band, and then we visited one Chinese restaurant after another, and they finally would allow me, or allow this band to perform, and in the long run, we also made some money. Beautiful money, I would say.
With a working permission?
No, of course not. I was on a scholarship. We call this DSP 66, or it's a special kind of exchange student form. Whether a regular student or visa or whatever, you are not supposed to work in the United States. Sure. If you want to find a job on campus or off campus, you need what they call work permit. This is very important.
So you're saying that you're sending all your scholarship back home to your parents.
Yes.
And you'll make your own living.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. And of course, the books, the tuition, were paid for, no problem at all. But, for my daily expenses, I had to, find money on my own.
But comparing to the other Chinese student or foreign student there, I think Chinese band and calligraphy teaching are much better than them, right?
Oh yes, of course. At least you wouldn't get your hands, let's say greasy. Okay, so I stay clean most of the time. Of course, I didn't touch those foods whatsoever. So and also I got to know Americans better because by communicating with them in terms of culture, things like that, you felt sort of very high class.
I see. What about you, Erico?
When I was in the States, I actually couldn't have a part-time job because of my visa. And now sometimes I go for like translation. That's the same reason with her, Rachel. I think it's very necessary to know like how to work, and it's very common for Japanese as well for college student to have a part-time job right now.
I see. What about you, Rachel?
Here in Shanghai, I've been teaching music. I also find little jobs here and there, what I can find. For my family, education is very important. My parents have always said that they would pay for my tuition, but it basically ends there. They want me to be able to know what it's like to work before I graduate and just get thrown into it. And so I make my own money, and I've been working both here in China and before when I went to university in America.
What kind of advice you would give to the audience, to our audience, if they are here as a foreign student or a newcomer? What should they do? What kind of job should they get?
Yeah, for our foreign friends here in China, what you have to do is simply follow my steps. That is, you should learn to make very good friends right here. Try to be very candid. Chinese people tend to be very conservative, yet they have a heart that is burning, okay? So they like you. Once they think that you are their friends, okay, they will treat you very nicely forever. So mingle with them, and also try not to be afraid of making mistakes in your Chinese. This is the same, okay?
Okay, what about those who are going abroad, who are going to the other country?
Chinese people?
Just Chinese people, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so my advice is that before you go to the States or the UK, you have to, through the internet, find as much information as possible about those countries that you want to go to. Later on, try to polish your English whenever possible. Learn to talk to yourself. If you can find some foreigners, approach them and then learn to talk to them. They will never laugh at you simply because you've made some mistakes. This is natural. Everybody, is allowed to make mistakes when learning English or any other language.
Thank you very much. Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, it matters. Welcome to the show. Tonight, we're going to have Rachel and Erico. Of course, Erico is from Japan originally, but she has experience in United States for college and graduated from Fudan University.
Eriko Sasaki was born in Tokyo, but while she mainly grew up in Japan, she lived and studied for a while in New York. She first came to Shanghai as a university student, majoring in Chinese at Fudan University. As a straddler of Eastern and Western cultures, she has gained an interesting perspective on both their similarities and differences.
And Rachel, she's studying Jiao Tong Daxue in the Chinese language and culture.
American-born Rachel is a student at Jiao Tong University, majoring in Chinese language and culture. This is her 5th year living in China. Music has always been an important part of Rachel's life.
Hello. Hi, Rachel.
She now teaches musical instruments as a part-time job in Shanghai.
And of course, Peter Lai, a guru type of language teacher to me, okay?
He is one of the most famous English teachers in China and has over 25 years of teaching experience. He is the founder of the prestigious publishing house, and his popular radio show has been on air for 15 years. Peter Lai believes, whether they are adults or children, that everyone has the ability to master the language. He now focuses his time on teaching children.
Oh, I see.
What is your name? My name is Kathy.
Beautiful. In the future, when you grow up, you will be somebody. 就是将来会了不起. I'm sure.
In the last 2 episodes, Peter shared a lot of stories, college life or graduate school life in the United States, unique language practicing process. Today, let's do a reverse. Let's hear from these 2 ladies first, and we would like to ask Peter to play the role of advisor.
If I can.
Sure, of course you can. Okay, now, first of all, let's identify these 2 young ladies first. Eriko, tell us a little bit more about your educational background, please.
Yes. I'm Eriko Sasaki, and I'm from Japan. I was in New York, in the States, from 2 to 7 because of my father's job. And then I went back to Japan and went my elementary school, junior high, and high school in Japan. But when I was a high school student, I went to South Dakota in the state for 10 months for studying abroad. And then after I went back to Japan again, I graduated my high school. I came to Shanghai. And I went to university in Fudan. And then in my university, it was it was a program. So I went to New York again for 2 years.
Jumping from China.
Right.
And then to New York.
New York, yes.
That's a big difference.
Right.
Why?
I think it was my program, so it's not what I made. But I think they wanted to compare us the biggest country, biggest cities in the world right now, Shanghai and New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting. Yes,
I
a lot
see.
of differences.
So
yes.
at least you have experience in 3 big cities in the world. Tokyo,
Right.
New York,
Yes.
and Shanghai.
Yes.
Amazing. So,
What was your major that they sent you to New York for 2 years?
My major there was a language. Well, it was a language school in the university, so I didn't have a major. But in my interest, after I got pretty higher level, I attend women and gender for a little bit. But my major in college was Chinese.
women
Yes.
and gender.
Yes.
Okay. What about you, Rachel?
Well, I have kind of a different educational background. I first went to university in Appleton, Wisconsin, at Lawrence University. And in there, I was actually part of the Conservatory of Music. I was a saxophone performance major.
Oh.
Yes, with a minor in music theory and many different other things. While I was there, my mom actually moved to Japan at first and was living in Tokyo for 9 months, and then immediately moved to Beijing. And so while I was in university in America studying saxophone, my mom was living in Beijing already. And so for summer holidays and Christmas holidays, I would go home to Beijing. And
excuse me, you consider Beijing your home?
Well, because I've
Where
moved.
your mom is?
Yes, I've moved many times in my life, almost every 2 years for my entire life. And so I've kind of come up with the idea that apart from Tennessee, which is where I was born and where my dad has always lived, wherever I'm living at the moment is my home.
Okay.
So right now, my home is Shanghai.
So you're Shanghainese now, huh?
Yes.
Good, good.
So I left America, I moved to Shanghai, and I found Jiaoda.
Can you speak Chinese when you were young?
No.
No?
No, not at all.
You never learned Chinese then?
No, I mean, you know, if I had a question, like I have a tattoo on my back that I got when I was a senior in high school. And, you know, my mom kind of advised me on it's Chinese, and she advised me on what to write for that. So it was kind of more that I knew that she spoke Chinese, I knew she had studied it, but until she moved to Asia, of course, first she moved to Japan, until she moved there, no, it wasn't something that we spoke at home.
It sounds like that these 2 ladies are a very good footnote of global village.
Yeah.
They have a lot of different experiences and mixed culture.
They're well-traveled.
They're well-traveled.
Yeah.
So what's global village means to you then?
Well, the global village is an environment where you are supposed to expose yourselves to different kinds of people. Not everyone is as lucky as this lady, but I do hope that, and I also want to encourage people here in China, if financially okay or fine with you, you should step out of this country, travel a lot, and get to know more about this beautiful world.
Yes.
Actually, we are all members of this global village, thanks to the invention of those high-tech, machines, including the computers and things like that. Okay.
Airplanes.
Help me translate this, please, Mr. Lai. 读万卷书，行万里路.
If you can travel around, equivalent to reading a lot of books. So to speak, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after the break.
I think Japanese university is I don't know if I could say it, but it's the easiest. And then
Easiest?
Your 平时成绩 isn't based on how you're participating, it's how often you come to class.
Welcome back to Cultural Matters. Okay, ladies, you both have experience in your home country, of course, just especially Eriko.
Right.
Before high school, you were in Japan.
Right.
And then you came to Fudan, and then to New York.
Right.
And for Rachel, you spent all your school years before college, I mean, after the college days, and sort of in the United States. Let's compare it to the education system in between your home country and China. What's the major difference to you guys?
Well, the style of classes is probably the biggest difference that I noticed when coming here. Of course, I had two very sort of particular cases. My university in America was very liberal, very small, very, it was either art students or music students. And so when we would have our general education classes, the largest class we had was 16 students.
Oh, really?
Yes. It was a very particular school, and almost every class, I never had a lecture class the entire time I was in university in America. Every class was a discussion class.
Okay.
And you would sit around a table with a professor, and you would just kind of throw ideas around. And you had to have your own ideas, because if you didn't, you would get lost. And then I come here, and I don't think I mentioned before, I'm a bachelor student at Jiaoda. And the classes are lecture classes. And for me, this is very difficult.
No discussion at all?
No discussion except for when I start. But most of the Asian students, especially the Japanese and the Koreans, this is just not their cup of tea.
So they're kind of quiet or something?
Well, it's probably not quiet, but we're just afraid to talk, afraid to make a mistake.
Okay.
And that's how, we don't speak. Well, for me as well, my university was only for foreigners as well. My major was. So I don't really know how other Chinese have their classes. But if I compare to the state, which when I took the women and gender, and also back from Japan, from my friend's story, I think Japanese university is I don't know if I could say it, but it's the easiest. And then China,
easiest?
Right, because when we want to get in the university, of course we have to take the test. But from if I compare from the Chinese student, I heard it's very, very hard to get in, and for us as well. But it's not as difficult as Chinese. And then also after entering the university, for us, we don't have that much homeworks, and also the tests. If you attend the classes, it's okay. It's just you pass the test basically. Then the classes from the state, I had so many readings when I was attending the women and gender, and I was so afraid that I was gonna fail because it was so hard.
Yeah.
And
that's why, I have to point out, before students here in China ever have a chance to study abroad, especially in those countries as the UK or the United States, you should learn that, the lecture giving system is going to be changed. Over there, they have this kind of a system called seminars. A seminar is a typical class that is composed of, let's say, no more than 10 students, at most 10 students, where you're supposed to give a lot of, do a lot of presentations. You have to, do a lot of research. And then it will be your turn to give speeches, all in English. So that's why, it's very important to learn this kind of system, to be familiar with this system. Also, you should learn to speak very fluent English.
So are you saying that the Western education system is more student-oriented? In other words, the student has to be very aggressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in China or in the Asian countries, we're expected to be a little bit passive. Is that a case?
I think this should go back to the very beginning, because in Chinese society, we are taught to pay, very high respect to our teachers. So that's why the teachers, sound very authoritative. All we have to do is keep on, taking notes, and the teachers keep on talking, and then we keep on, taking notes, and that's it. And whether a student is good or not depends on how well he or she does on the tests. Whereas in the Western society, usually students are encouraged, to talk, to express themselves, and to get their ideas across to others. I think this has to do with the cultural things.
Yes, and I think in American university, you have, most of the time, you have part of your ending score which is based on class participation.
Okay.
Whereas here in China, you have your 平时成绩, right? But your 平时成绩 isn't based on how you're participating, it's how often you come to class. And if you miss so many classes, then your 平时成绩 is so much lower.
That's so-called cultural difference. We pay high respect to the teachers.
Yeah.
And there's a very important word to both Japanese and Chinese, that is obedience. Maybe that's the fundamental difference between Eastern people and West, maybe. But we're going to discuss that after the break.
I could just ask the teacher, and sometimes the teacher thought it was too much because of the Chinese culture. 有一个辅导，然后跟他每天讲中文。
他们不会说英语，所以我只有一个办法，我必须说汉语。
As the economy continues to grow each year, more and more foreigners are packing bags and heading to China. Here in Shanghai, the expat community has grown to be more than 60,000 at the end of 2007. One of the consequences to this phenomenon has been the increased popularity of Chinese language classes.
Thank you. I didn't. I knew hello and thank you, and that was it.
Using your hands, English, hoping that people might understand you.
I knew a couple of words like ni hao or xie xie or something like that.
People here will help. Even if we can't speak, we can do sign language or, somehow get through.
I found that the Shanghainese people are so warm and welcoming, very friendly. If you walk down the street and you make the effort to smile, pretty much everyone will smile back at you also.
It's very different to Australia in a lot of ways.
The food is different. The language obviously is completely different. The driving here is different. It's just trying to keep an open mind about the differences and learning about them.
Just maybe if I'm out on the street or shopping, I do try a little bit.
When I'm in a taxi, because the taxi men are very talkative in China.
I did hire an IE that speaks no English, so I've been able to start communicating with her more.
Welcome back to the show. Now, talk about language. Is that a problem to foreign students who are studying here in China because they don't have a chance to practice their language in class?
I don't think so necessarily. I mean, depending on what types of classes you're taking. I mean, I suppose most foreign students, especially most Western students, when they come to China to study, they're just doing a short sort of study abroad thing where they're studying the language. And of course, when you're studying the language, they're going to have at least one speaking class. But still, you know, I have friends and my cousin have come over here and done these language courses. And sometimes it does become a little bit of a problem because I think the Chinese view is that the speaking class is for speaking, the listening class is for listening, the writing class is for writing, and you don't talk in those listening and writing classes. Now, to an American and probably many other Westerners, this is a little different. You know, you're used to asking questions in class.
Okay, Erica, what's your special techniques in language learning?
Well, first of all, like Rachel said, I think it's very important to be like aggressive. I usually, when I first got here, I used to sit in the very front row. So whenever I have a question, I could just like ask the teacher. And sometimes the teacher thought it was too much because of the Chinese culture. She's like, okay, Erica, like after the class is over, but like usually it makes the atmosphere better because if I ask something, usually for Japanese and maybe for Koreans as well, but everybody's so worried to ask questions.
Yes.
But then somebody asks, like if I start, then another people just ask. Oh, I have a question too.
Yeah, they'll follow up. Yeah,
Right.
And also, I believe the teachers that that taught you might have had a very good impression about you. I guess because of your being so inquisitive.
Right. Yeah. So I actually got a pretty nice score.
Let me just tell you what I did exactly the same thing. I just went to the front, sitting in the front row, asking questions. So I was told to do so before I formally began my class. Okay, I talked to my advisor, and he told me on that particular day, the first day, hey, you got to be inquisitive, not like those Chinese students, okay?
Those tips come with the lantern, right?
Yeah.
Small lantern.
You're right, yes, yes.
Yeah. Have you ever encountered any learning difficulties in languages, in Chinese languages?
I do. I had a, for the sushen, for the four...
Tonality.
I had a problem because Japanese usually is very flat. So I also studied just for the pronunciation 3 months with my tutor. I asked her to just correct my pronunciation, and it took me around 3 months. I every time she brings one news, and then I read that, but it's only for three sentence. But she corrects me 3 sentences for about hour and a half every time.
Could you show off your Chinese just a little bit?
好的，那我自己给自己介绍嘛。
好啊。
Good.
你好，我叫那个佐佐木英利子，我是日本人。我刚来中国的时候，因为我觉得如果跟中国人不讲话的话，就我的中文不会提高的，所以我自己每天有一个辅导，然后跟他每天那个讲中文，这样学。
Very good. Has no problem at all. Her Chinese is perfect to you, right?
Right. I would say so. Yeah.
You would say so.
What about your Chinese then? Would you like to show off just a little bit?
Oh no. 那我怎么讲呢？
随便介绍你自己。
刚来上海的时候，我第一个朋友就是一个中国人。
OK。
然后从他我再认识几个中国人，所以我的办法不是拿一个辅导，不是在上课的时候学，就是认识人，然后他们不会说英语，所以我只有一个办法，我必须说汉语。但其实原来我的口音也有问题，因为那个人我那个朋友是东北人，所以原来我的口音就是东北的。
So this lady just set a very good example by, befriending people, picking up, some words every now and then, everywhere, and then you can learn to speak this language.
You have to be very diligent in studying. I think.
That's why the first few days I already began, to expose myself to those native speakers. I mean, learn to talk to them and then try to make friends with them. This really helped me a lot.
I just agree, about making friends, because also I didn't mention it, but I had Chinese friends as well, and that helps me my communication level. But for me, like I mentioned, I never studied in Japan, so I had to fix my pronunciation first, because if I talk with Chinese, every person has a different accent, and sometimes that was a problem for me. But I really agree with if somebody wants to learn a language, it's very, very helpful to have the local friend.
Yeah.
Just like the question that Erica raised in the very beginning, like 四声.
Yeah.
Like also, what do you have any good advice
I think
to the people who are learning Chinese?
Erica already did what I did long time ago to begin by practicing pronunciation first. So you have to buy some sort of CD or whatever the language source and try to learn those sounds or tonality at a very slow speed. I think less than 3 months you can master that. Also, you did exactly the same thing. If I remember correctly, only 3 months. It's all right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, I would say that both of your Chinese are excellent as a foreigner.
Oh yeah.
Culture matters, it matters. Hello, Shanghai. Join us today in the studio, besides Peter Lai, and of course another very famous English teacher. He was rated the most welcome teacher in Taiwan University, Mr. Bruce Bagnall. Welcome.
Thank you, Sammy.
First of all, tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Well, I first went to Taiwan in 1972, and I liked it. So when I had a job offer in a what we call bushiban, then I went back to America again for further education in order to qualify for teaching at the university. And from 1982 until now, Taiwan is my second home.
You two have a joint radio show.
Yes.
Right?
That was about 15 years ago. I think
15
we
years
started to do the broadcasting about 15 years ago. At the radio station, they tested me by putting me in a studio to do the broadcasting for an hour, all in English.
You went through another test again?
Yes. Yeah, they didn't trust me in the beginning, okay. But, in the long run, of course, they felt very happy because I'm a Chinese and my English used to be very poor. So I know theoretically and practically all the pitfalls, those, Chinese students may have in the process of learning English. And then I came to Taipei again, so I, brought the news to this bandit. I call him a bandit.
A bandit?
Yeah, simply because, we're very, very good friends.
Okay. Do you know how to speak Chinese?
When I first went to Taiwan, I didn't know a word.
He's not telling the truth. Actually, he's very good at numbers. Okay, because
what do you mean by numbers?
Well, numbers has this particular word has to do with money. Okay.
Okay.
So when he gets money, he knows how to count. The money correctly.
Is it a habit to you to speak slowly because you're teaching English? Because I can tell that your speech is sort of slow, though.
Yes, because I want to be clear.
Okay, just make sure that everybody understand you, especially to your students.
Sammy, when I go home to the States, my kids will say, Dad, you're not in Taiwan anymore. You can speak faster now.
Oh, your family still lives there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, both my kids were born in Taiwan, and my son grew up there. And of course, his Mandarin is much better than this guy's.
I can,
Sure. Okay.
agree with
now,
you.
You've been living in Asia, in Greater China for 26 years consecutively.
Yes.
When you go back to United States, you feel comfortable with it?
When I went back, we arrived in the San Francisco International Airport. That's when the shock set in.
Really?
Why are all these unhappy people moving so quickly?
What do you mean by unhappy people?
Everyone's serious and, you know...
In a hurry?
Really, Americans tend to be an impatient people. And the worst place you can put them is in an airport. Everybody's, my flight, I'm late, or why is it delayed? So airports are not very happy places to begin with, I think, for anybody. But for maybe Americans in particular, I don't like waiting for a flight either. And it's understandable in that situation. But later, I had experienced that, so now I'm used to that. But I feel very comfortable in Asia because most of my adult life has been here.
So you consider here as your second home or home right now?
To be honest, home.
Home. Okay, great. And to Peter, have you ever encountered or experienced a culture shock before?
Yes. As I said, the first time I got to the United States on the airplane, that time, I was quite amazed at the fact that those stewardesses, were so nice. I mean, Western stewardesses, not, the Chinese stewardesses. I have to be very frank, They were so nice. And they treated me, so politely that, I thought, I was being flattered or something. Yeah, and yes. Yeah. I felt very happy about that. And gradually I changed my attitude. So once I got back, I volunteered to say hello to people, whether they would respond or not. Here in Chinese society, if you say hello to people on the street, usually they would think you're a little bit strange, right? But not in the United States.
Not necessarily. I mean, I would say Chinese people, regardless where you are learning, actually.
Yeah.
If you say hi, say hello, to say good morning to the people on the street that you don't know, you'll get a very good response.
I do not mean, that they are being offended or something, but that rather they were surprised. Hey, someone so friendly, is saying hello to me.
Why are they talking to me?
Yeah, this kind of thing. So I think the situation is changing slightly.
Okay. Peter started to learn his English by checking dictionaries, by readings and so forth, by remembering all the words.
Yeah.
I mean, vocabulary is sort of important to you.
Yes.
But what about you? Chinese to you? Chinese is much more complicated than English because each character has more than one meaning sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, this is true in English as well, but we normally learn or teach the first meaning of the word. For example, boot. The first meaning is a high shoe, if you like.
Shoes.
Right. But you boot a computer when you want to turn it on. So that's a technical meaning of the word. So that's not really much different between, say, learning Chinese or French or English. It's something you have to get used to. You learn the primary meaning first. And then as your knowledge of your new language broadens, you have to learn these other meanings as well.
Teaching language to you as a foreigner.
Yes.
You're teaching the language. Are you teaching the culture behind it as well? But
I think you have to.
Yeah, sure. We talk about that. We can talk about that after the commercials. We'll be right back.
How do you translate something like zonzi?
Heavily tainted or polluted.
Polluted.
Yeah, polluted.
Or website blogs.
I'm lost.
Even you?
I often can't understand what they're talking about.
My own experience, the hardest part English was how to talk fluent English.
I think it's grammar. 跟别人说话的时候听不懂，感觉很难。
I think the pronunciation is the most difficult thing because we are in China.
You know, a lot of Chinese people have the same and the problem, that is opening your mouth to speak English.
Way of thinking between the Western culture and the Eastern culture is quite different.
I find it all very difficult, particularly the tones, using the different tones. That is just a complete mystery because it's something that we don't have in English. We have mainly focused in our class on the verbal and the pinyin writing on it, and there's been many times where it's the same word but it's used in a different context.
Oh, I would have to say also the tones. I find that very hard, to raise your voice, lower your voice, get your tongue around the tones. That's really hard.
I'd have to agree with the rest of my friends to say yes, it is the tones. It's the tones that, and also the same word with a different tone has a different meaning. So that's very hard to remember and use it when you really need it.
Welcome back to Culture Matters. Okay, Bruce, why are you teaching both language and culture to the Chinese student?
Mm-hmm.
Which part is more difficult to you?
Oh, I think the culture.
Culture. Why?
Well, the words, they're used to learning new words and their meanings, but often we don't know what's behind these words. For example, when we're learning Chinese, red, hongbao, that kind of red, has a significant meaning. But if we just translate it into English as a red envelope, people who know English will just think, oh, it's a red-colored envelope. They won't understand the rich cultural heritage behind red or dragon and other concepts in the culture.
That's a very interesting subject. We've been talking about hongbao in this program for several times. Yeah. Let me ask Peter about it. What's the correct translation of Chinese hongbao to you? Any suggestions?
I would say perhaps the only translation is still red envelope. Then also you have to follow up by explaining more about this in terms of its cultural things. For example, we give people a red envelope to mean that we wish them good luck and things like that. So you have to follow up by giving more explanations.
Sure, there's no simple explanation.
Right, it's very hard to translate some expressions word for word sometimes.
For example,
right.
粽子.
粽子.
How do you translate something like 粽子?
Yeah,
even if you do, it doesn't mean anything to the Westerner unless you eat one.
True.
Then you really understand it.
Just like we use dumpling to describe xiaolongbao, baozi, and jiaozi, and almost everything. Every stuff. And we use dumpling. I mean, people got confused. So in English, what's the most difficult part to the Chinese student in learning English to you?
Well, in writing, of course, it's going to be grammar. In speaking, I think it's having students relax so that they will realize there's not just one way to say something, and that they should experiment with the language. If they don't know how to say it, try to say it, and your teacher will correct you if necessary or point out the differences. For example, hi, hello, how are you, how do you do? Maybe if we translate into Chinese, it would seem to be the same thing, but the social situation is different. If a teenager meets another teenager and says, how do you do, it's going to sound very strange indeed. So it's more than just the words. Language is much more than the words. How are these words used? That takes a lot of training.
But in Peter's theory, I think you think that English is more serious in forms or in orders than Chinese, right?
Oh, yes.
Grammar, yes.
Yeah.
Grammar.
Chinese basically is a little bit loose, We can sometimes change the word order and still keeps the same meaning. Whereas in English, you have to follow very strict, rules.
Yeah, for example, 书笔我都买了. But we can't put the object first in English. But of course we could say 我已经买了书笔. You could put it at the back.
You mean 书和笔?
对.
Okay.
you could put it at the back or the front, no big deal. But in English, it's a big deal because our grammar, as Peter says, is much more structured and ordered.
But in spoken English, I think this is another story. In written English, of course, you are not supposed to, put two subjects together without any conjunction. For example, he, this gentleman, did a very good job. In written English, this is wrong. But in spoken English, it's okay to say, Mr. John, he did a very good job,
Yeah.
So depending on the
Non-standard
situation,
speech.
non-standard speech.
Non-standard, but nowadays, there is another too. People use electronic mails or website blogs and so forth. I think the language, grammar on this kind of, on these stuff are much more looser.
Oh, yeah. It's heavily tainted or polluted. I want to use this word.
Polluted?
Yeah, polluted. Yeah. It's okay because, as long as I can, get my ideas or passage or messages, across to you, if you understand, that's okay. And this is even worse as far as Chinese is concerned.
When young kids speak rap or something like that to each other, I'm lost. I often can't understand what they're talking about. They have their own slang. And I'm almost as old as he is, so you can imagine how difficult that is to understand.
I want to correct that one. You're 1 month older than I.
As an English teacher, what will you say to the youngsters?
It's okay to use this kind of expressions every now and then, no problem. As far as communication is concerned, face-to-face communication or written,
text
email,
messages.
is concerned, no problem at all. But quite often, as we apply for jobs, they were supposed to use formal English. So as an English teacher, I sincerely hope that we learn English the right way, the formal way when it comes to written English. Written English. But every now and then you're supposed to present a report or something in spoken English. Still, your grammar really counts. So formal English is still, the something that we should pay close attention to.
As we understand that Peter used a very special techniques in his English practicing. For instance, like
to pigs.
What? Talking to pigs?
Pigs, yeah. Also.
To pigs?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something he didn't mention in the
dare.
previous show. Okay. Anyhow, we want to listen to that after the break.
I kept pointing, bounce.
Right here, you can take a good rest. That was deep at night when I talked to those pigs. Those pigs, I believe, wouldn't laugh at me. That would give me a lot of...
She's not going to sell it to me.
Now to me, maybe it's talking with my friends.
Movies, English movies, and listening English songs.
Can you sing one or two sentences for us?
I think not very.
Okay, just one or two sentences.
My life has gone away. I forget it. There's a hero if you look inside your heart.
可能有
跟外国人用英语表达，
就是跟着老师读，
听英语歌，
跟老师交流。
I don't practice it as much as I should, but I practice sometimes with the children and in taxis or sometimes in shops.
With my IE mainly, and some with my children because two of my children are taking Chinese. And there was one day where I had a conversation with my 5-year-old about the days of the week, and then also with my driver.
I do like to watch on television. I do sometimes when I'm looking through the channels, I'll listen to some of the Chinese music, but I really understand like just an odd word here or there, so not very much.
Culture matters, it matters. Welcome back. Talking to a pig. That's what Bruce mentioned. But you didn't say that to us.
Well, I think I already told you, ladies and gentlemen, that I used to be a very shy person. Even today, I'm still very shy.
Okay.
So while I was quite young when I began to learn English, of course, during the daytime, no problem at all. I could, read everything by daylight. But at night, well, that's another story. I was brought up in a poor family, so, I had to find some place where I could find some lights. So there was a pigsty nearby, so I went over there. And besides, that was deep at night. When I talked to those pigs, I believe, wouldn't laugh at me. That would give me a lot of courage to keep on making mistakes every now and then. Yes.
Okay. But still, no matter how good you master a foreign language, sometimes you make mistakes or face language barrier difficulties and so forth. Give us some example, please.
Well, from my experience, just beginning to learn Chinese, I once went to a shop and there was baozi there.
Okay.
And I wanted one. And I told the clerk, 我要一只包子. And she pointed down the street to the newsstand. And I thought, well, she's not very friendly. She's not going to sell it to me. And I kept pointing, 包子, 包子, 包子. Finally, body language, she realized, oh, this guy wants a 包子, not a 包子. Right. So I think you have to keep practicing, you have to keep trying. Body language is very useful at that level of the language.
I also got a similar story that happened to me. I was once in a lobby of a hotel when an American, I believe, came to me. He wanted to find where the restroom was. The restroom is a combination of two words, rest and room, which of course means the toilet. But I thought it was a place where you could take a rest or something.
The lobby.
Yeah, the lobby. This is the restroom right here. You can take a good rest. He looked at me, of course, a little bit puzzled. He thought that I was joking or something.
There is an argument, like a vocabulary and a grammar.
Yeah.
And pronunciation, of course. These three important elements. Which one is more important in language learning or equally important?
Basically, they're equally important. But if you want you to ask me to put them on a priority, I would say your pronunciation is the most important. Because if you have a very good pronunciation, at least even one single word that you say will be understood by those, foreign friends. Otherwise, for example, I was in Shanghai several years ago. I was, sitting in on a class that was taught by a teacher here. And he read, a sentence like this. People in the rural area, I finally was able to understand what, he actually was. People in the rural area lead a hard life.
Yeah. Oh, he's speaking English.
Yeah, rural area instead of saying rural area.
Rural area.
Yeah, so that's why I would say pronunciation is the most important thing. And then followed by, of course, your vocabulary. And then, of course, in the long run, grammar is very, very important, perhaps the most important. But if you are just beginning to learn English, definitely, you have to know that you should open your mouth first.
Sure.
But once you can open your mouth, you have to make sure that whatever you say is understood by your foreign friends.
We had an argument here in this program. People, one of our guests says he finally chose the way to remember all the characters instead of practicing pronunciation and grammar. He thought that the recognition of each Chinese character is the most important thing in Chinese learning. Does that apply to you?
Well, not at all. Not at all, because we have to remember the primacy of listening and speaking. There are many people throughout the world who are illiterate, but they can speak and understand their own language. There's hardly anybody who can only read and write, unless, of course, they're unable to speak or they're studying a dead language like Latin.
We all agree that the Chinese tones of 四声 are the toughest part to the learner. Any advice to them to overcome this kind of situation?
I find, I'll speak for my own people, many Americans tend to be impatient. and with learning things, and they want a quick road to success. And they think tones are 麻烦. So some of my friends will say something like, 我要到火车站去. Those are 四声. Because they've never bothered to take the time. To me, it's a musical language. It's so interesting, and of course, as you know, sometimes it will change. 两个三声, 第一个变二声, 三声. This kind of thing is a real challenge. If you slow down, take the time, you can enrich not just the language experience, but how to listen to things.
Bruce mentioned that Chinese language is a very musical language because of the rhythm, because of the tones, and so on. Thank you for mentioning that. Because Peter has his own band, and he mentioned that music played a very important part. Culture matters, it matters. Welcome back to our show again. Join us today is again Mr. Peter Lai and Rachel.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
He is one of the most famous English teachers in China and has over 25 years of teaching experience. He is the founder of the prestigious publishing house, and his popular radio show has been on air for 15 years. Peter Lai believes, whether they are adults or children, that everyone has the ability to master the language. He now focuses his time on teaching children.
Oh, I see.
What is your name? My name is Kathy.
Beautiful. In the future, when you grow up, you'll be somebody. 就是这样会了不起. I'm sure.
American-born Rachel is a student at Jiaotong University, majoring in Chinese language and culture. This is her 5th year living in China. Music has always been an important part of Rachel's life.
Hello. Hi, Rachel.
She now teaches musical instruments as a part-time job in Shanghai.
The reason why we put these two people here is because we're going to talk about some supplementary materials that helps in language learning. And we all know that you played 9 different instruments, right?
Yes.
And of course, Peter used to have his own band.
Yes.
Do you still play with band?
Actually, we still have a band.
Still have a band?
Yeah, we still have a band. It is composed of about 5 members. Yeah, one on piano or keyboard. Keyboard. We also have a bass player. I myself am, the drummer. We also have a substitute. That's my son. My son is also good at playing the drums.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have 2 guitarists.
Sure.
Basically, we sing those oldies, golden oldies.
Yeah. So let's talk about songs later.
All right.
Besides music, any other supplementary materials that helps in language learning?
Well, obviously, movies and television are always a great tool. And radio when you get a chance. In China, I mean, every now and then in the taxi you'll hear some talk radio, and that's always interesting. Maybe it's a little too difficult for some beginners because Chinese radio, to me, seems to be a little fast.
Have you ever used this kind of a tools before?
Oh, definitely. When I was, beginning to learn English, that time the radio played a very, very important role. So I listened to the radio. Yeah, at that time, I got a chance to listen to an American program. The program, on which the speed was rather slow.
You understand them all?
No, of course not. In the beginning, your listening comprehension was, of course, not quite good. It would take some time. If you can keep on listening to those programs on a daily basis, gradually you'll make a lot of progress.
Just get used to the tones, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Also, your vocabulary also counts. If you have a larger vocabulary, of course, you can listen or understand more.
Radio is probably very good for intermediate level because it's good to get the colloquial terms.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. But I prefer to listen to the radio. By listening to the radio, you do not see the images. You will not be distracted.
Right.
So that's why. Yeah. Yes.
Well, why? I mean, the images, you'll be attracted by the figures,
especially
by
the
beautiful
host
lady.
or hostess is very beautiful. Then you forget, that what your purpose is.
Yeah.
What about movies, like Rachel just mentioned? Movies and TV shows. Which TV show or which movie ring the bell? I mean, that helps you in the beginning.
Well, for me, when I finally got to my level of Chinese where I could watch a Chinese movie without only staring at the English subtitles, one that I really enjoyed and that I watched several times was Farewell, My Concubine.
Oh, okay. Farewell, My Concubine is 霸王别姬.
Yes.
Okay, that's Chen Kai-ge's movie.
Yeah,
okay.
and to me, that's a really fantastic Chinese movie. And, if you haven't seen it as a foreigner who enjoys Chinese movies, that's one that you have to see. And, for the language, one thing that's very interesting about it is the music in it, and that it has the Jingju.
Chinese opera, Beijing opera,
Yeah.
Beijing opera.
And, this is something that is very difficult to understand as a foreigner. And you're not going to understand it just from watching the movie, but still it gives you a little insight into the ancient language or the older language of Chinese.
And they do have the subtitles. At least, these subtitles can help you understand what it's all about.
Yeah.
I would say back in the 70s, movie is a big thing to the high school student or college student, right?
That time, of course. But when I was learning English, of course, I watched television most of the time.
English television?
Definitely, because I couldn't afford to buy tickets, to the movies. Okay. So that's why, to save money, television, of course, was a very good channel. I still remember there was a very famous movie series called Combat.
Combat?
Yeah, Combat. It's a war movie. It's about the Second World War, featuring those American soldiers in Europe, fighting against those Germans. Okay, so the language itself was very easy to understand. Quite often, I would just stand behind the television set with my brothers and younger sisters sitting in front of it, and then I would just do the translation right on the spot, even though most of the time I didn't know what they were talking about. Still, I forced my brothers and sisters to tell me whether my translation is correct or not.
But they're reading the Chinese subtitles.
Yes, of course.
Combat.
Yes.
I think the Chinese translation of that show is 勇士们.
Oh, you're really something. You're in the know when it comes to movies. You're really something.
First of all, I'm not that young. We're in the same generation.
Right,
first of all.
Right.
Secondly, to me personally, I would say movie plays a very important role in my life and my language learning or cultural learning process. Actually, I still remember one of the movie that impressed me the most back in the late 70s. It's an American movie called 3 Days of a Condor. I'm not saying that movie is the best, but I happened to watch that movie for 3 times.
Oh.
The first time I went to see the movie with a group of my classmates, and the other group of my friends didn't see the movie, so I went to see it again. And the third time, I have to take my girlfriend to watch the movie. So the very last time I watched the movie, I didn't really watch it. I closed my eyes and listened to the lyrics.
Good.
I listened to the script.
So this goes to show that repetition is very important.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's true.
Especially, when you're watching a movie and it's in a language that you're learning, your tendency, especially if it has the subtitles, like you're watching a Chinese movie, it has the English subtitles or the other way around, you tend to watch the subtitles. And it's hard to kind of pull yourself away from that, except for when you start repeating it. Repetition is definitely very important for watching movies.
But for local students here, Chinese students here, it's better not to read the subtitles when they watch television or any
you
movie.
should try to avoid it. It's difficult to avoid sometimes because it's right there in front of you. But if you can close your eyes and just listen, then you're going to get more absorbed into it.
Yeah, you'll be more attentive.
Yeah.
Attentive, and of course the rhythm, the way that people talk, and musical rhythm, that really helps.
Oh yes,
in pronunciation sometimes,
right? Especially with regard to your intonation.
Sure, of course. And talk about rhythm. Let's come back after the break with some real music. We'll come back.
The magic dragon lived by the sea.
白兔白又白，两只耳朵竖起来。
A song? Love me tender, love me true.
Welcome back to Culture Matters. Have you ever used a song or practiced a song in your language learning process?
Oh, yes. I was crazy about singing when I was quite young. Okay, I learned to play some musical instruments at the age of about 15 or so when I was in junior high school the last year. Okay, gradually, I learned to form a band of my own. I just found that learning to speak English by listening to those oldies really helped a lot, because as we talk real fast, but when we sing, of course, those romantic songs, you tend to slow down, and then this of course gives you a chance to practice your pronunciation.
Why oldies?
Oldies are very short. Usually a typical song will last about 3 minutes. Not only that, but the lyrics are easy to understand. What's the best part about this is that all the sentences are complete sentences. In the long run, you also know how to use words correctly. Yeah.
I see. Give us an example, please.
Oh, let me just simply.
Yeah, sure, please.
A song? Love me tender, love me true, never let me go.
Okay.
See, in this particular song, you'll find that grammatically this is wrong. Love me tenderly, you should say. But love me tender. That's fine. But you also get to know some of the important parts pertaining to pronunciation. Never let me go. Instead of saying never let me go, you could say never let me go. Like this. I like this very much.
That's Elvis Presley's.
Oh, yes. You are also in the know.
As I said, we're in the same generation.
Yeah, I'm scared of you.
No. And what about you, Rachel?
Oh, yes. I think music definitely helps when learning a language. With Mandarin, I think one good thing is I like the rhymes.
Okay.
More so than the music, because with the music you can kind of lose the tones, right? But there's lots of rhymes that, little children will teach you and stuff. And my favorite one has always been 小白兔.
小白兔.
Yeah.
Okay, sing it, please. Share with us. Yeah, please.
小白兔白又白，两只耳朵竖起来，爱吃萝卜爱吃菜，蹦蹦跳跳真可爱.
Okay. Well, that's an even tougher part, the rhyme.
Yes.
And I really
rhyme.
Like that
It's something I would say that's a postgraduate. To you, is English. We can find some rhymes too, especially in the Chinese English poem and so forth.
Yeah.
Is that a tough thing to learn?
I don't think so.
No.
Quite easy for me. Okay, little star. You have this twinkle, twinkle, little star. The rhymes
twinkle,
themselves are not very hard to understand or to memorize, but it's actually the structures. Sometimes when it comes to songs, they do not stick to grammar.
Right.
In this case, usually this will pose a problem for you.
I see.
And besides, sometimes they do involve a lot of hidden meanings. For example, one typical song is called Pop the Magic Dragon.
Pop the Magic Dragon.
This one has to do with, persuading, people to quit smoking. They use the dragon to mint cigarettes. The Jackie Little paper, refers to a boy who's curious about, smoking, and they stuck together, and finally, the young boy grew up, and then eventually, he gave up smoking.
Oh, I didn't know that. I love that
it's
song.
quite
Peter
interesting.
Pan
So
Mary.
that's why we say usually American songs or Western songs involve a lot of hidden meanings.
Yeah, sing that for us, please.
Pop the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Golden oldies.
Yes.
Golden oldies.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
one. That's a good one.
Everyone likes
So
that
talk
one.
about tonatic. In music, with the rhythm, with the music background, actually it really changed the tones of each character sometimes.
Yeah.
So would that be a problem to the people if they rely on music in language learning?
Well, I think you shouldn't rely on music for language learning. I think it should be a tool.
Okay.
And yeah, especially for Chinese, but for English as well, like you said, you can't really trust the grammar structure of music, of songs, especially pop songs.
Yeah.
So what you really should be getting from it is pronunciation and vocabulary.
Okay.
I mean, that's what with the rhyme I just said, the 小白兔. For me, and also this is one thing that my mom loves this rhyme, and she will always remember, 萝卜. And, just these little vocabulary words, because once you get that rhyme in your head, you're never going to forget those words.
萝卜白菜.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. You both play guitars. I mean, I know that you play 9 different instruments, right? And of course, even though you're a drummer, but I know that you play a lot of different...
I dabble in some musical instruments.
Okay, that'd be great. Let's bring in the musical instruments and let's listen to these two to play some real music after the break. Okay, we'll be right back.
Dear heart, wish you were here.
Hey, Pacha, hey.
Wow, pretty amazing. I didn't know that, Peter, you're really a professional drummer.
Far from that good. Thank you very much.
I thought you were playing the Chinese drum, but you're playing those like traditional Western drums, like a jazz drums.
Yes.
Well, that's tough, huh?
I don't think so. Practice makes perfect.
Oh, okay. But I think her job is tougher. It's rarely to see a lady playing saxophone.
Definitely saxophone is there's more men that play it. In Shanghai, I think I'm the only female saxophonist that I know.
Now we see some guitar here.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we play with it, okay, please make some recommendation to our audience. If they are learning Chinese, which song or which songs will you recommend to them for them to listen to?
Well, For me, I tended to listen to some more sort of traditional songs, and that I kind of learned all the words, and through that I learned what the words meant was 北京的金山上.
北京的金山上.
Yes.
That's a tough one, though.
I know, it's a good song, and, the melody is very simple,
Yes.
and the words that you learn in it are somewhat useful, but for Western audiences, maybe people like something a little more trendy, and that way I would say 崔健.
崔健.
崔健, yeah, it's very good.
一无所有.
Yeah, I guess they call him the godfather of Chinese rock.
Chinese rock, yes.
Yeah. And so to me, he's got good melodies. It's something that Westerners maybe will like a little bit more. So, yeah.
What about you, Peter?
Personally, I prefer those oldies, golden oldies, in between the 1960s and 50s, I guess. So those songs are very slow, and they carry very simple, short lyrics, quite easy to memorize.
Okay, can you recommend several of them to our audience?
All right,
please?
the first one that pops into my mind is called, let's see, Love Me Tender.
Okay.
The second one is More Than I Can Say.
More Than I Can Say?
Yeah. Whoa, oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
that
yeah.
one, yes.
Oh, okay. Say that, please.
Love you more than I can say. I'll love you twice as much tomorrow. Whoa, love you more than I can say. Instead of saying love you more than I can say, usually they weaken, the vowel. They will say more than I can say.
That's
good.
Good.
That's also a good way to learn the differences in, in singing English or, spoken English.
Okay. So we have a guitar here, since we have the real instrument.
Yeah.
So why don't we, you both knows how to play guitar. Now, first of all, Rachel, can you sing a song with your guitar?
I can't wait.
Okay.
Oh,
now, please, maybe the 北京的金山上.
Sure.
Show us, please. Let me move this one a little bit forward. Move the microphone forward so that the sound of the guitar will not interrupt your voice.
Now, it might want it to interrupt my voice. I've never claimed to be a good singer, so I apologize if it's not the best quality singing in the world, but still.
No. I mean, actually, this is not a performance. This is experience sharing. So that's the beauty of it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a little nervous.
No, don't worry about it. Okay. We should give her a applause.
Yeah.
Oh no. All right. 大稻香。Hey, bacha, hey.
Whoa, great! You know, this is a tough song to learn. You have to know the background. You have to know certain vocabulary is really good to learn, huh?
Yes, that's what I said before. I think it's a very good song for learning a little bit about Chinese language and about Chinese culture.
Great. You go to karaoke often?
When I first arrived in China, I did quite a bit. Now, getting busy and you don't go quite as much. But that's one thing that I really enjoyed when I first came to China.
And it's a good way to learn the language too.
Yes,
right?
Definitely.
Great. Okay, now your turn, Peter.
My turn, okay. I'll try my best. I'm
leader of the band, right?
I don't know whether I can finish the song or not, but just, let me just try, okay?
Tell us which one you're going to sing.
Dear heart, wish you were here to warm night. My dear heart, seems like a year since you've been out of my sight. A single room, a table for one, it's a lonesome town, alright. Oh, well, that's it.